Hello YouTube, this is Ben Gessel. I'm going to have a little more time today to do some stuff. It's been nice. This is going to be a follow-up video to the first one I made about depictions of fantasy creatures in fantasy adventure movies. So again, one of the points I was trying to make, and I think I got this pretty clearly, is that fantasy genre, fantasy movies and things, books and things, especially, well, they don't really rely, sorry, my hair is sticking up a little bit again. They don't really rely as much on certain elements as we sometimes think they do. And really, I'll try to leave this one. You know, they don't always rely on detailed. This is a video game kind of thing with magic. They don't always rely as fully on all these different kinds of spells, but then also on top of that, they don't always rely very much on having a huge number of different fantasy creatures in them. And I mentioned before in the first video that there are a small number that, if it's something where an author's writing more than one book about a world, that it's worth it definitely to add more to that world in terms of different kinds of fantasy creatures. But if you don't talk about one book, how many, I mean, really, one story, you don't need to keep adding in all these other, creatures. Otherwise, at some point, most of them are going to probably just be very secondary, or just passing in nature anyway. Something kind of just go whoa, and come on. So it can be overdone with some, it can be easily overdone. But that being said, though, we find what the question is, what do we find intriguing, and on some level, knowing what we enjoy, as well as what we find intriguing, curiosity-provoking in fantasy, or what the reader might find, the average reader of fantasy might find really curiosity-provoking. It's always the kinds of questions to ask. Really. Some of these creatures have some sides to them that I think are rather worth exploring more. And then if you're getting outside of all these creatures I mentioned, into other creatures, whether it's Dungeons and Dragons or some other thing, like there's everything from the mind flayers and Dungeons and Dragons to the gelatinous cubes, and right. And you have giant salamanders and the worms that are kind of more beastly. They probably wouldn't say much, and you have the shapeshifters. You always have shapeshifters. It's just probably more in horror, and yeah, I mean, wraiths, and I don't know. So I'm gonna go through some of these creatures and then mention maybe a few other movies. There's definitely always all those other movies that exist, that aside from the big ones, that can be mentioned more. I know a lot of fantasy movies are geared toward kids. Again, my opinion is that shouldn't necessarily be the case, because many adults enjoy fantasy as well. Just we like it to be more on the level of adults, other than always having gingerbread. But even now we have it's the Brothers Grimm. It's another movie worth mentioning, of course. I mentioned this movie before, but ever since we had this idea of the evil gingerbread man, a lot of different kinds of ideas you can kind of twist to make it darker. But okay, so anyway, let's go into more detail about some types of creatures again. Now, witches, I've mentioned before in some other videos I've put out, have so much potential for so many different kinds of things you can do with them. Witches can be prostitutes. They can be very loose. Maybe that's not the direction most of us really want to go, but there's that side to witches, certainly. The name witch is often an evil connotation. It doesn't have to be. It can be good. So, I've often asked this question, a good magic user that is not a guy would be a witch, right? Well, like the word witch has this negative connotation. There's a good witch. She's a white witch. She's a good witch. Oh, okay. Maybe perhaps the term mage is nice because mage is kind of gender neutral and it's kind of all inclusive. Or the sorceress, right? Sorceress doesn't have to be evil. There was the sorceress in He-Man, for instance. So, but these are kind of just what the kinds of the word witch is often with the Halloween witch with the green skin and or the Wizard of Oz witch with the again the nose and the bumpy the warts all over the place. And anyway, so aside from we have the darker types of witches. We have not in addition to the loose witches, more we have the very vengeful, angry witches, as very frightening witches. Of course, you can have. Okay, this was explored the craft a little bit with teenage witches and the whole high school witch thing. Which I don't want to get Fruza Ball kind of. Okay, so and that's more of a scary movie, I think, but horror, but you have like your herbal witches or your nature witches and all that stuff, and the witch out in the woods and sort of thing. You could have your nice lady that turns out to be a witch. You could have your witches that are not really human, like as in Roald Dahl's The Witches, which is another movie I mentioned here. You could have, but see, the thing is, if a witch is a good person, you can have, or a nicer person, or maybe just more complex, or neither good nor evil. You can have some very refined witches, right? You can have some very artistically refined witches. You can have some witches that are, their residence is more like a palace, or maybe it's nice. It's a nice house. It's very ornate, very colorful, or has very beautiful design. The witch herself is a cultured witch. You're not sure, maybe it's clear if she's good or evil, or if she's just in the middle somewhere. But she's interested in fine arts, and she herself is an artist, and she just uses magic, and that kind of witch, right? So getting into this kind of, okay, we're just talking about a regular human being here. It's just artistic. Well, because you have real life witches, and they're after all women, so so again, you can really do a lot with this idea, but in order to have like a fantasy witch, you kind of expect to have some degree of not being just a regular woman, right? I don't know. I mean, something to set them apart, but at some level, we are talking about just women, human women, unless we are indeed talking about some monstrous kind of idea. Or something, I don't know, but maybe the idea which is it's ripe for the Halloween witch, the exaggerations of that. You can go different directions with the creation of new creatures that might be frightening and dark, or might be just different. The alien witch that so it's as broad as humanity can be, really. So there's a lot of things you could do with that idea, which is demons and devils. So, I know that there's a connection between the Minotaur and the classic idea of Satan having, trident and horns. The horns and hooves thing, it's very much found. It has roots in Europe, and it's often the Hollywood idea of Satan. Satan, because we've, I don't know, most people haven't seen the devil. I personally believe he has a human form, but certainly we want we want the Lord of Demons, the leader of all evil entities, to be quite unbelievably frightening. Right? So a lot of times we have these monstrous ideas of what it would look like, and demons themselves, and of course the chief demon, like the devil himself. We have various ideas of what they might look like, and there's there's all the more crafty demons. There's the demons that are just more human-ish in regards to the entities that take on maybe a human form, that maybe they're shape-shifting. Because demons, in my opinion, are shapeshifters, but they're the folks that they're the entities that maybe, like I mentioned, with witches being quite cultured. There's some demons that can be very cultured, very well spoken, and that sometimes actually is the case. And we won't get into that. That's a kind of religious subject, somewhat a supernatural subject, but I mean, so there's all kinds of frightening, monstrous ideas. With the idea of a monster, right? Monster is very similar to a demon, but you can have different, you have huge eyes, black eyes, red eyes, and insect-like or beastly, um, some sort, bodies. A dragon is connected with this idea of kind of a really big bad boy. Yeah, I've sometimes talked about again. I know I've explored this idea before on YouTube. Talk about the idea of combining like a wasp, a gigantic wasp, with a dragon or a demon. A demon with tentacles, or with that's all I'm going to explore. But a demon with like stingers and stuff, all over, like an insect-like demon. But you can also, anything that any creature you can imagine, just give them, yellow eyes, red eyes, and black eyes, or whatever. Um, well, okay, so there's a lot of different visual things you can do with demons, but on some level, you're going to keep coming back to a humanoid type of form. Either they're really big and have red skin and whatever, really strong. Uh, yeah, I mean, but a demon can also be very lazy. Dragon Age, by the way, explored a little bit more in depth these ideas of different kinds of demons, based on like different kinds of sins or different kinds of things that are, we fall prey to: pride, lust, uh, uh, gluttony, and um, slothfulness, right? Um, Anger, and all the different kinds of things. And they have demons for all these different kinds of uh, human frailties and things. So it's interesting. Okay, so I can mention all that more. So there's a lot of things already, obviously, that you can do with these ideas. Fairies, I think, it's already a lot of ideas with fae folk, the little guys, right? Have been explored. There's all these things that just keep multiplying. So yes, playfulness leading to mischievousness, leading to something darker, perhaps. The practical jokester, the cutesy thing, the wish granter a little bit, not a genie, but a fairy godmother. The little guys up to humanoid size ish. Wingless versus winged or flying. The idea of these colored orbs, perhaps, that can be like little fairies. Just, fairies, I know, tend to be more feminine. Um, you can have fairies that are kind of mysterious too. You're not sure if they're good or evil sometimes. The idea of the will-o-wisp, it's a different kind of creature. I know it's Celtic and things, but you could have a creature in a story where you're not sure if it's a will-o-wisp or it's a fairy, or it can be uncertain in a moral sense, and maybe it'll grant you wishes or it'll help you, but maybe something about it that you're wondering if it's good or evil, or or something kind of more neutral. I know we're always trying to figure out the morality of creatures, and perhaps sometimes it gets exhausting because you keep doing it. Maybe a lot of times you just want to enjoy a book or movie or something, video game, but we want to just enjoy a character for its unique voice, their unique voice. Um, just the uniqueness of it. You can have fairies that are isolated from the rest of the world. There's something very peaceful about a place you can go to where it's different from the rest of the world. This is one of the things about fantasy. Some people call it escapism. I don't like that idea. I don't like that word. But we often like fantasy because it's different than our normal world, right? So you can have fairies that purposefully isolate themselves from the rest of even a very beautiful world that's in fantasy, but they don't want to have much to do with all the rest of whatever because of whatever reason. Maybe they've had bad experiences with certain other kind of creatures, and so they're isolated. And so they have their own little families and they have their own little society. And you have more than one of these kinds of groups, but some of them are rather odd, or some of them are rather I don't know if it's something unpleasant, but something. Or if you've had a society that's been untouched, a society of fairies that has been, or something similar to that, something that's been untouched by other creatures and other whatever human, whatever in this world for quite a while, you're gonna get some interesting, cultures, I guess you say, and yeah. Ways of acting, I guess. But I think some mannerisms are either sometimes contrived or they're kind of you can tell the authors that really give a lot of thought to this, and that if you're talking about fairies, that there's certain kinds of behaviors that are generally considered more fairy-like, and others that are less so, and so it's always a question of what boundaries you're going to push, here and there. Fairies are not dragons, right? They're not going to go in with their fire and their physical strength and their fangs. Okay, I mean, there's a limit to what I'd like to use shapeshifter-wise. Shapeshifters, anyway. When I'm talking about fairies, I am talking about magical beings that are smaller, that are often better, creatures, but not necessarily always. But there's still a lot of possibilities there from different ideas, from Celtic ideas, involving the will-o-wisp and also leprechauns, and to you name it. So, okay, goblins, gargoyles, imps, impish skeletons, little henchmen. There's a creature I forgot to mention in the last unicorn, of course. It's that grinning skull, or that guy that kind of jokes around with that guy who comes to the old palace. So the illusionist, I can't remember his name. There's a traveling party of that magician who's an illusionist who's kind of dopey with the last unicorn, and the old lady or something like that. And there's a small little group of folks that goes to this castle, and that's where they meet the prince who has a special fondness for the unicorn. Who, I think that's where you get that idea of unicorn turning into a woman kind of thing. But you have these types of creatures: goblins, gargoyles, imps, impish skeletons, little henchmen. You probably add to that kobolds, in Dungeons and Dragons. The little guys, they call them the little henchmen, as well as like the henchman in Black Cauldron. That's this little guy, so the little feral guys, and they're all kind of similar because these are all little munchkin bad boys, right? They're bad, kind of, not necessarily because they're so small. They're often kind of neutral, really in alignment. They're not really truly evil, and it's always fun to use these. Most of the time it's fun. Sometimes when we come across a certain kind of character like Gurgi in Black Cauldron, when we come across something like Gurgi in another story, oh, this is Gurgi again, right? Speaking in third person and not Jar Jar Binks, but the comic relief, creature, or the who have food. I don't know. I want food. Something. Right, the little pet. Right. It's a what do they call it? Not a cliche, but a trope or something. that some tropes, we're talking about tropes in some level, um, and that one doesn't really get old. It's just when you have a little sidekick, even if he's a uh, little ruffian guy or whatever. Um, it's always nice to have him somewhat unique from other such characters. In He-Man, he had Orko. Orko was a nerd. He's just a nerd that you couldn't see his face, and you know, but he was kind of a brainy nerd guy. He had a nasal voice, right? Which is a different kind of character entirely than Gurgi, who's this little animal who wants to eat everything that uh, the main character has. And he's different. They're different than Gollum. Gollum's a twisted hobbit, twisted by the power of the One Ring, and he's a little beast. He's not really little. He's got some torque. He's compared to hobbits, but he would not hesitate to bite into someone's face. So he can be really, really vicious. Maybe he's not always considered on the Munchkin level. He's probably a little bit more dangerous, but hypothetically, but he's still kind of a little guy. But kind of. Yeah, but then, and of course you have the gargoyles from the Hunchback from Notre Dame, and their kind of, their personalities, and so on and so forth, all these different. And I think that there's still a lot of potential for all these other characters, and we're talking again about the little guy, the little henchman. We know we can identify them very, very readily. What we like to see is their own little personality coming out. And we see a lot of the same kinds of personalities in humans that are not as they're not doing so well in life, or they're kind of not as bright, or they're shorter, or they're more timid, right? Or they're kind of bard-like, right? Sometimes, somewhat, depending on the personality, can be. So, okay, moving on to wizards. And again, like witches, we're just talking about the flip side, just guys now. And wizards, I know the word wizard has a little bit more of a good than evil connotation, but it can really go either way. So I don't really think this one needs much explanation, but you can have very scholarly wizards, you can have very, power-hungry mages, and you can have, more business-like wizards. You just keep going. I mean, you really could. You really could. Scientific, artistic, not human wizards, like Gandalf technically was not he's humanoid. Okay, and then so another kind of creature here I want to get into, but Ents and tree folk. So yes, it's true. The word entish is Lord of the Rings specifically. So you want to, tree folk is what is a more general term. If I had a story involving trees being alive, but really being alive. I'm not. I mean, they don't have spirits, but trees being able to talk and stuff. So the first question I think any author would want to ask themselves is if they were to have talking trees, because honestly, like C.S. Lewis does the same thing, a similar thing, but not really. You don't really hear trees talking directly, but they could. It says even the trees are either allied with Aslan or the White Witch. So, but you could. I mean, just consider what trees would say. Different kinds of trees. I know you had like I can't remember where this is from, but there's some other things in Lord of the Rings other than Ents that have to do with intelligent trees, like an oak or something. But you can get some personalities. Yeah, I know it leans toward like men, but it's very grandfatherly kind of ideas. But you can, of course, you have the grandmother willow type, absolutely. And you can get some grandmotherly qualities with the trees, and motherly. But talking to a tree, yeah, I mean, they tend to be gentler spirits, I would think. But maybe they might be very, very wise as well, in a way that humans aren't. So they might have some I don't know. It's just worth thinking about, I think. And then if you had some, dark, twisted types of trees, how they would think, maybe more sinister types of trees. So I think there's some possibilities there for especially more of a forest type of setting. Uh, which is I'm gonna get into more in this video. Um, and then you also have like wood spirits that are kind of like can be related to that tree thing, but it's kind of a Nordic thing a little bit, somewhat. Um, so you have, I have, it's regarding forest creatures. You have fauns, centaurs, and elves. On some level, these are all somewhat human-like. We've infused them with a lot of human-like qualities. These creatures are more like humans, certainly than dragons. Dragons are very reptilian, right? Or they're evil, serpent-like, right, like a snake. It'd be interesting to kind of have a kind of a rivalry. The fauns being pursuers of pleasure, just wanting to be lazy all day and do whatever they wanted to do. Centaurs being maybe more allied with the elves, but perhaps the elves are more into making things from nature. Well, not crafting, but perhaps the elves see the centaurs as being kind of like brute beasts a little bit more. So the centaurs sometimes feel a little bit frustrated by, maybe they feel like the elves are a little bit arrogant, and so it could be a minor little scuffle there and there, but maybe the fauns are allied with another kind of similar kind of creature, maybe some lazy humans, right? But that would be an interesting idea to pursue, I think, a little bit. Industriousness and being more respectful toward nature always, and disciplined and polite, right? The polite elves and centaurs versus the live life to the fullest fauns and humans. Anyway, I don't know, on some level, it isn't the type of creatures that would define it as being fantasy, but you probably want some elements in there as well to make the story kind of interesting. So genies, I think, would be also be a very interesting idea to pursue, the idea of more than one genie, and maybe sometimes wishes, different people's wishes might clash, and so what happens at that point? And so, you could have. I'm not saying you have to have like a soap opera with genies, but you could have. You can have some. You go some different directions with that whole idea of genies, I think, in the past. So some of these other movies I mentioned briefly. There's many others I'm familiar with. Golden Compass, yes, I know about the Golden Compass. It has a few awesome qualities, but Lady Hawk didn't have any fantasy creatures, but because it had witchcraft, witchcraft, yeah, it's fantasy, and it's knights and things. The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus had the devil himself, and some fantasy elements of certainly. The witches obviously have to do with witches. Roald Dahl. Aragon, I think, had something. I don't remember exactly what that. I just remember that from. Maybe it had something to do with a dragon. I'm not sure. Spyroot Chronicles, more for kids again. Had a few interesting creatures, but it's kind of very much a tree fort kind of fun little movie. Dragon Slayer, also dragon related, not quite as great as Dragonheart. Kroll, Kroll is a little bit like Legend, similar era. It's kind of going a similar direction with what it was about, but Kroll is more about the idea of the party banding together to fight something. So a very, very classic idea of fantasy as well, which I like. But Kroll isn't as well known, I think. And of course, you have the Terry Pratchett movies that tend to work out better in books and sometimes video games, sometimes not necessarily always movies. But The Hogfather and there's another movie with Sean Astin that I liked a lot, though, in particular. But anyway, so But Terry Pratchett treats and particularly treats the Grim. Features the Grim Reaper a lot. There's a lot of Grim Reapers, right? Just the Grim Reaper, and he's a huge. Has a huge spot. So you'll see the Grim Reaper a lot in his movies, as well as golems, and golems are, are dumb big boys, and or some kind of similar kind of bigger humanoid or ish type of creature. So that's about it for this movie. I think what I'm trying to say is, there's still only so many ideas that have been explored in fantasy with different kinds of creatures and different kinds of plots. And there's still a lot more. I mean, it's there's an infinite number of possible stories and creatures. So nobody should feel like every idea has been explored. That's certainly not the case. So leave me your thoughts and comments below. I'll talk to you guys later. Thanks.